The Americans actually made a film with the theme of the 731st Infantry Division. An anti-personnel gun connects 3 time and space to take you through different timelines, pushing you into that dark age of brutal man-made life experiments. The human body is dissected, the human body is cremated, the rats are tested, the human flesh and blood are exchanged, and it's hard to get rid of it. In 1931, the Japanese Guandong Army invaded Manchuria with China as an excuse, and soon extended the range of power to the distant Russian border. The peaceful life of the 3 families of the 8th Route Army was also broken by the merciless war. The fighter was covered in sunshine and humming in the sky. This day, Guang hurried home and told his wife, Shifeng, "I heard that those Japanese officers were looking for construction workers everywhere." Coincidentally, Guang is from Benz. Sure enough, a few Japanese came over now and then. They found out that Guang was a construction worker and told him to pack up his luggage and follow the army. As soon as the camera turned, a big bearded doctor passed through time and space and witnessed the scene just now. This means that the Research Institute's anti-personnel gun has been successfully designed. In order to verify this, unexpectedly, the stockpile of anti-personnel guns unexpectedly led to a big explosion. Many years later, a man named Neil returned home. He is also a construction worker, just like Guang. He currently lives in 2 places with his ex-wife Elena, but they still raise their children together. Neil's company has recently received a project. 2 clients, Carl and Byron, auctioned a piece of land from the owner of a copyrighted property. This piece of land has been transferred 3 times since 1968. Neil's boss, Garrison, took over the commission and planned to transform this place into a school. But as soon as they arrived at the scene, Neil saw an abandoned factory. "I don't know which unlucky child will be sent to school in the future." The 2 entered the building and looked around. This should be the explosion lab. The anti-personnel gun was also buried in this mess. Neil found food on a desk in the office. He couldn't help but speculate that the employees here seemed to have left suddenly. Maybe something bad happened at the time. Garrison told Neil not to worry about useless things. "We just need to figure out how to improve the decoration." The 2 went down the stairs. They went through the messy equipment and entered a space at the bottom of the building. They saw an anti-personnel gun. There was a strong magnetic field around it. Neil's flashlight and cell phone were all affected. He took the courage to get close to the machine. It seemed to pass through the blue light wave. "And I saw Dr. Big Beard and his family in 1931. The next second, Neil felt like he was strangled. He fell to the ground and woke up. Garrison looked at him like this. "Tell him to leave here as soon as we do a test." Neil had to keep his head down. He did the test honestly. Who knew that as soon as he went out, Garrison started to show his face. "I've been waiting for you outside for 45 minutes. What kind of test is going to take so long?" Neil was very confused. He was only in there for about 10 minutes, but the watch on his wrist proved that Garrison was right. "This place is really strange." As soon as the sound of the words fell, Neil saw a strange man under the tower not far away. It's just too far away to see clearly. Neil didn't want to leave with Garrison. The next day, he finally had a chance to spend the weekend with his son. Neil planned to ride a motorcycle with his son, because his ex-wife hated him playing with motorcycles. So Neil was about to get rid of the car. Before he turned around, he had to experience it with his son. Neil asked him to sit in the front and teach him how to control the motorcycle. He kept accelerating and accelerating. At this moment, the strange feeling came again. Neil heard the sound of the lab around him and sat in the front. Neil became Garrison's son, and he forgot where he was. This caused Garrison to turn over. Neil climbed up quickly to confirm his situation, but he saw his son's face full of blood. As soon as the camera turned, Neil anxiously waited for the operation to end. Elena rushed over as soon as she heard the news. She was completely disappointed with Neil. "It's okay if you like to play those dangerous things. Why did you bring Garrison with you?" The doctor came to interrupt the quarrel between the 2. He pointed out that Garrison's retina was seriously damaged and needed to be deformed to restore his health. But the donor needs time. During this time, the retina will slow down further. "I'm afraid it's going to cost a lot of money because there's no insurance." Elena didn't mind the high medical bill. She warned Neil to miss the operation no matter what. "Take the blame for yourself." Neil called Garrison, but he didn't answer. He had to rush to his office to see him. Who knew he would be stopped by Garrison before he could speak? Fortunately, Garrison wasn't very angry. No matter what the test results were, the contract had to be signed anyway. He happened to have lunch with Neil. After eating, he went to get the test results, but he didn't eat. Neil took the time to talk about his son's injury. "If there's an extra shift, you have to contact him first." After a day's work, Neil returned to Elena's house. Now that his son is injured and needs care, Elena has no choice but to move him back. Who knew Neil would wake up again with a strange phenomenon when he met Willie? Neil saw Xiaobao's face through his son and forcibly suppressed his doubts. He was going to talk to Elena, but he noticed that she was crying in the house. It turns out that the doctor predicted that Willie's retina could last another 3 weeks. If it is not transplanted as soon as possible, it will be completely blind. Neil didn't expect the situation to be so serious. As the saying goes, 3 feet of freezing is not a day's cold. Elena had already lost her trust in Neil and wanted to defend herself. Who knew that when she met Elena's body, Neil's brain began to be confused again. It's just 3. He now believes in the experience of abolishing the factory, and it affects his health. Maybe he can get some business compensation. As the saying goes, Elena's words are like her daydream. And Neil took out a business card from the factory and searched for the remaining information. From the business card, the big bearded doctor's name is Maurice. Before he could find more information, his good friend Andrew called. The reason is that Neil contacted Andrew once to sell the ship because the ship was shared by the 2 of them. Andrew said that this weekend he was going to go out of town with his wife, Naomi. It's better to meet and talk. The annoying illusion still appears from time to time. Neil knows that Elena won't believe what she sees. Fortunately, he didn't mention it. That day, he saw Elena and her son leave in the car across the street. He saw the man under the tower. The other person wore a mask and couldn't see his face. When Neil found out, he immediately drove away. Soon after, Andrew and his wife Naomi arrived. The 3 of them were drinking and chatting in the backyard. Naomi recently met a white man in the workplace. They were having a sweet conversation. Unfortunately, Neil couldn't hear anything. He accidentally pressed his hand on the barbecue rack and was in great pain. At this time, Allison came to say hello. A few people gathered and turned to the bar. But Allison was very impolite. She knew that Naomi was a married woman, and she was in a bad mood. Neil couldn't stand it, and could only remind her to be careful. Allison's explanation was just a chat. Then she started the conversation, and dragged Neil to the stage to sing. Who knew that the illusion of that old man was still there? Neil was in a trance. He saw someone dissecting a living body. He was affected by the illusion and unconsciously attacked Allison. The latter opened Neil's heart. The couple left. Neil regained consciousness and then died. He can't afford to lose his job now. On the way back, Neil told his close friends about the illusion and planned to go to the abandoned factory again. One is to get the test results back, and the other is to see if there is any mystery in that place. Of course, if Andrew and his wife don't want to go in, they can wait outside. Andrew said, "I'm not going in anyway." The car arrived at the destination soon, and Andrew stayed in the car. Only Naomi accompanied Neil into the building because he was engaged in the news industry and was full of adventurous spirit about all the unknown things. Neil and Naomi approached the example counter, and the flashlight flashed a few times to declare bankruptcy. The cell phone also lost signal. Naomi and Neil had seen the West Wing through this machine before. Seeing their family suffering from inhuman torture, Naomi was affected by it and fell to the ground. Fortunately, a few minutes later, she was back to normal and quickly followed Neil out of here. Andrew and his wife complained that they stayed in there for almost an hour. This is probably due to the time lag. As soon as Naomi had a seizure, it was difficult to remember what had happened before she fell to the ground. She now has a headache and wants to go home early to rest. Andrew sent Neil to the door of the house and left quickly. Unexpectedly, the car of the masked man was parked on the street nearby. Neil took off his license plate and went home, but found that the back door had been locked. There was a rustling sound in the kitchen. Neil was worried about a rat, so he hurried to check it. Unexpectedly, a shadow was quietly approaching. Neil grabbed a kitchen knife and threatened the masked man to get out. In the middle of the night, a stranger broke into the house and could not be left alone. Unfortunately, Neil did not have much energy to deal with this matter. As soon as dawn broke, he went to the company to apologize to Allison and explained that he did not do it on purpose last night, and handed her the test report. The results showed that the entire building was contaminated with grapeseed and black mold. If excessive inhalation may cause brain damage, this situation certainly cannot be changed in a school. But Allison has already invested a lot of money to sign this big order, so she won't terminate the project for some grape mold. However, the more Neil thought about it, the more dangerous he felt. He checked on the computer just now that the factory used high-voltage current. Only special laboratories use this kind of electricity. Who knows what harmful substances will be left in it? The two disagreed, and the quarrel soon broke out. Allison sprayed Neil with electromagnetic smoke and even started with those hallucinations. Guan, in the picture, is carving toys in a Japanese factory, hoping that Xiaobao can be happier here. Who knows that the little action was broken by the officer, and the latter reminded him that people who don't work honestly will be punished. Neil captured it sharply that the Japanese officer had a 731 on his shoulder. At this moment, a few soldiers fell with a stretcher and showed some bruises. Guan was scared and wanted to run away, but the soldiers who caught up with him were stunned. This is the end of the picture. Excited, Neil asked Allison, "Did you see the picture just now?" The latter warned him not to cheer up, and he could leave the company. However, those hallucinations just wouldn't let go of Neil. When he came home and met his son, he would see those Japanese officers using the young Xiaobao to carry out a live experiment. Bailey was confused and didn't say anything now. Helena led her son to rest without a word, and Allison lied that the test results were very clean. She was about to discuss further with the client, but Naomi came over with a serious face and asked her if Neil was at work. "I called, but I couldn't get through." Allison had some thoughts about Naomi, so she greeted him politely. When the two shook hands, she also saw those hallucinations. She only saw the Japanese officer dragging Shifeng away in front of Guan and tying him to a chair for a frostbite test. Naomi seemed to feel the same pain. The electric shock actually broke out again. Fortunately, this time it only lasted a few seconds. However, Allison realized that Naomi had probably been to that strange factory. On the other side, Neil still remembered the sound of a rat. He immediately turned on his computer to search. The translator answered a play. At this time, the outside was suddenly lit up by light. Neil took a torch and walked out. He asked Shifeng in front of him, "Who the hell are you?" Until Naomi's voice rang, he helped her disperse her hallucination. Naomi explained that since she had been to that factory, she had begun to have symptoms of hallucinations. Neil was about to explain what he had found when he found another car parked outside the door. It turned out that Andrew was worried that his wife would come after him. He always felt that Neil's relationship with Naomi was unusual. This time, they met in private, and in an instant, he said that he had already sold the power generator on the ship, which would have caused the ship's value to plummet. Neil was in a hurry to sell the ship, and he tried to do it in a fit of anger. But Andrew pushed him to the ground. Naomi quickly came forward and lifted Neil. Unfortunately, the two of them came into contact with hallucinations. Neil wanted to figure out where these images came from, so he searched with Naomi to find out what 731 was. A story that was hard to tell gradually unfolded. During World War II, Japan's Guangdong Army was stationed in 731, an anti-epidemic water defense unit. During World War II, it was named after preventing diseases and water purification. It secretly conducted biological experiments and developed chemical weapons. They set up the world's largest chemical warfare base in the Northeast. The person in charge of it, Andrew, was the Japanese general that Neil saw in his hallucinations. They conducted biological experiments with the Chinese, the Koreans, and the Japanese. But Neil wanted to know why he had hallucinations, and Naomi had more channels in the news. Neil didn't say much to help him complete the investigation. He just took out his own license plate, and hoped Naomi would help him check the registration information. The next day, Elena invited Garrison to her mother's house. She hoped he wouldn't fire Neil. Their family was in urgent need of money. If Neil lost his job, there was no hope for Willie. When the baby boy walked into the living room, Garrison stood up and said hello to him. He didn't expect to cause trouble. Willie was crying and told his father that those people were hurting his mother. Willie didn't know how to comfort his son, so he had to close his eyes and pretend it was a nightmare. Not long after, Willie was thrown back by the Japanese. His hands were crippled and stained with blood. Then Garrison regained his senses. But Elena found that his performance was the same as Neil's before. Could it be that the factory really had a healing effect? The picture changed and went back to Neil. Naomi didn't find any registration information. She planned to ask her father, Mr. Garrison, for help. The other party is a prestigious police officer with more power. Neil first took out a name card and asked Garrison to investigate. It turned out to be Dr. Maris. In 1978, he had presided over the indoor project, but Garrison didn't check the documents of the project. Neil had to ask him to check the license plate number. The information shows that the owner's name is Roni Nanda. He was also a member of the Intord project, but in 1978, he was dismissed. The government didn't record the situation after that. In the document, there is a group of experimental people standing in front of the Enrico Fermi Research Institute. Nanda was standing next to Dr. Maris. Garrison found his current address. Neil and Nanda immediately went to see Nanda. On the way, Naomi checked the meaning of chai intort. Intort used to be in the myth of India. It was a treasure tree hanging in front of the palace on the 10th day. Later, it was introduced and developed by the Buddhist Huayan sect. It symbolizes that all things in the universe coexist with each other. Neil soon arrived at Nanda's residence. He told Naomi to wait in the car. He went from the back window into Nanda's house. In the house, he could only see a lot of information on the wall. At this time, Nanda came back. Fortunately, Naomi came in with a spray gun in time and convinced Nanda. She asked him what the Ettore project was. Nanda explained that it was a cross-dimensional reconnaissance application. The countermeasure in the factory is called the Eye of the Ettore. He detected entanglement particles that crossed space and time. He also found that these particles reflected each other's behavior, and those who were affected by the Eye of the Ettore, their souls are entangled together. That is to say, Dr. Maris in 1987 and Agudang in the 731 unit, and Neil now are the legendary past, present, and future. We don't know how the reincarnation can turn the Huang people into the Bai people. In short, the three lines are entangled together because of the countermeasure. Neil couldn't figure out why they were involved. Hua Yen just landed, and a car hit Neil in time. This hit also showed him the timeline of the 731 unit. He could only see a family of 3 being pushed in the direction of the incinerator. Agudang rushed to the rear to delay time and was killed by several soldiers. In the next second, Neil and Naomi woke up from a sharp headache. What we just saw made the two of them unable to recover for a long time. Naomi told Neil that if this entanglement was real, then what you reflected was an incurable family trauma. For example, Agudang in 1931 could not save his wife. Dr. Maris 1987 ignored his wife's opposition and increased the contraction rate, resulting in the explosion of the lab. His wife and the unborn child died miserably. Now your family is also dying. Fortunately, Neil still has a chance to make up for it. We can't change World War II. We can't change that explosion. We can only change ourselves now. Neil thought Naomi was right. Who knew that when he just got home, he saw Carrie's car parked outside the door. Elena had packed her things and was ready to leave with Willie. Neil guessed that it was Carrion who said bad things about him behind his back. This led to a misunderstanding between Elena and Carrion. She rushed over to fight with Carrion. This scene overlaps with the scene where Agudang assassinated Jacob Mailing in another timeline. It seems that Carrie's son corresponds to Jacob Mailing. When the two were fighting, Naomi left with Elena and Willie. On the way, he told the mother and son that the illusion Neil saw was not a lie. We are closely related to another timeline. Naomi took the two of them to see Nanda and asked him how to save them. On the other side, Neil threw Carrie's son away and went to the company. He took out the test results of the US military and gave them to the real estate company. After Carrion returned to the company, he found that the documents were missing and immediately called Neil. The two of them agreed to meet at the abandoned factory. Coincidentally, Nanda also told Elena that there was a way to save Willie's eyes. We can change the location of the motorcycle accident through the collision. So a few important people all came to the abandoned factory. At this moment, Neil, who was angry, was riding a motorcycle and ran into Carrion. When Elena and others entered, they saw the two of them lying on the ground. Nanda took care of them and quickly started the collision. He asked Elena to help and the machine was turned on. The three timelines overlap and change. The story goes back to the day when Agudang's family was taken to the crematorium. But this time, he attacked Jacob Mailing and broke the other party's military uniform and anti-poison mask. As for Jacob Mailing, who was wearing a long shirt, he replaced Agudang, who was supposed to be dead. He subconsciously fled to the iron net and was shot by an unknown subordinate. Agudang took the opportunity to pretend to be a military officer and fled the base with his family, and became the only survivor of the 731 incident. The second timeline of Dr. Maurice was about to increase the rate of collision, but was stopped by Nanda. Now the two timelines have changed. Willie naturally avoided the motorcycle accident. At the end of the story, Naomi took her daughter to Harbin, China, to meet the only survivor of the 731 incident. But Agudang and Xining have long passed away. Now there is only Xiaobo left. He agreed to write his own story as a report to the world and let everyone remember what happened that year. The story ends here. The director has used the 731 troops as a serious topic. The content of this discussion is actually a family. It looks like a big and small work, but it's still meaningful that this history can be moved to the big screen. Someone has to remind everyone to remember this history. It's a pity that the script is not very good. The 731 troops and space travel are such good settings, but they tell such a mediocre story.